Hello, my name is Michael Lavenstein. I'm making a video for class SOCY424 in response to the article by Crenshaw, 20 Years of Critical Race Theory, Looking Back to Move Forward. Before I state my opinions and my views, I would like to point out some parts of the article that stood out to me. So, critical race theory, if you haven't read the article, is basically how it's a view that the law and legal institutions are inherently racist in the United States and maybe in other countries as well. I'm not very sure on that part, but definitely in the United States. Well, I'm pretty sure globally because white supremacy is a global thing. And they're inherently racist, the law and legal institutions, and instead of being like a biological thing, it's something that's socially constructed, and it's used by white people to further their economic and political interests, especially at the expense of people of color. And according to this theory, racial inequality emerges from the social, economic, and legal differences that white people create between races, which again is another socially constructed thing, to maintain their elite white interests within labor markets and politics, which by effect raises poverty, crime, and a lot of other disadvantages and many kinds in many minority communities that are very oppressed. On page 1259, it says, in reflecting on the origins and trajectory of the Montgomery bus boycott, historian Alden Morris acknowledged that sociologists and historians were not able to predict nor explain how or why this particular boycott sparked a mass movement while dozens of other efforts either failed to gain traction locally or media attention nationally. And this is where my comments come in. And so I think this concept is an excellent concept to highlight the unconscious and conscious efforts that the white community creates that to or make differences that are socially constructed. And I've seen how small neighborhoods are sanctioned and practically designed to put people of color at a disadvantage. What I mean by this is for example, things such as the school to prison pipeline, which was mentioned in the article and also the video that was provided. A lot of schools don't get funding, and a lot of children in very poor neighborhoods are brought up in poverty, and instead of going to school, they probably have to work. But finding work is really hard, and it's even harder if the school doesn't have a lot of resources. And so the student is more likely to stay at home and try and take care of other jobs while the parents go to work, maybe babysit. It depends on the family. But with that said, a lot of crime trajects from that in the way that if students can graduate from school or get good resources and they're basically guided by bad teachers to do bad in school, they're not going to really be able to get a very high functioning job unless they have some type of resources that aren't available to the masses. And also I would also say that crime is because of poverty, which isn't the fault of the people who are in poverty, but it's like a catch-82, I would say. students can't graduate from school, they can't get good resources, and they can't get a good job. And if they're at the risk of like hunger, like they're about to be homeless, what are people going to do? Well, they're more likely to commit crimes in order to survive, because it's basically like survival of the fittest, of the people that, well, not survival of the fittest, but in those neighborhoods, it's like survival in terms of like, oh, they would leave the house and commit crime, like steal things, because they're not being given other resources to get a job, to do well in school, to get help in school, etc. And another thing I would like to point out, in the article on page 1261, it says, in the same way that Kendall Thomas reasoned that race was better thought of as a verb than a noun, I want to suggest that shifting the frame of critical race theory toward a dynamic frame rather than static reference would be a productive means by which we can link critical race theory's past to the contemporary moment. And I really love that, because I was in a class, it was a sociology class about race, just like this one, and there was this book by Hazel Rose Marcus called Doing Race, and it suggested that doing race is not something that, so race isn't something like that's like permanent or biological. No, race is an action. Race is something that we do. Again, if you want to look up the book, it's called Doing Race, and I highly suggest it. And it basically highlights many things, like ethnicity is something that we are, but race isn't something. That's something we do. That's something we project every day from learned behaviors, society, and we learn how different news is framed differently to make people look worse. And yeah, but I'm going over the time limit, so thank you very much for listening, and that is all.